Welcome, Reanimated fans. Hope you all are doing quite well. Summer is officially hit, at least on the East Coast. I don't know about the West Coast. Is it hitting there too, or has it hit a while ago?
Oh, we've got some nice high temps. Rain's done, I think, for the immediate future.
But the dulcet tones you just heard, my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin. I'm H.A. Conrad. Little work things to work around. So sorry for the skip last weekend, but moving forward, and we today are going to be talking about this film that was out of Uruguay called Virus 32.
Wild. Did you have a good sense of where Montevideo was before we did this?
Yes, actually, but only because I have a friend from Uruguay.
Is that how you say that too? Montevideo?
I am not a good person to ask that of, so I'm just not going to say it.
It's where the film is set.
Yes. Yeah. And so, this is this director is Gustavo Hernandez, and he has like a few other things that have been in the hopper. I have not personally seen them. And then there's also another writer involved. I think Huma Fode or Fode. I think it's Fode. And so this was released to Shudder. It was hitting a few other film festivals, correct, Stuart?
I'm not sure if what festival work it got, but yeah, it was definitely promoted to my eyeballs for being a Shudder exclusive or Shudder original.
Yeah. And it definitely pulls from like a bunch of films that if you are into the genre, you're going to recognize them. If you like watch, I felt like echoes of a ton of stuff. So there's definitely some 28 Days Later, a big, heavy homage to 28 Days Later. I feel like almost it could be a related, it wouldn't be shocking if Danny Boyle was just like hanging out there in the background or something like that. Then definitely a little bit of Dawn of the Dead in there, but it's also got its own like kind of like different, it's got its own flavor, so to speak. But we'll get into all of that. Great cast, I thought. And overall, I think it's kind of an interesting thing because you have these exclusives to Shudder and Netflix, and some are really just like terrible and schlocky and low budget. I would say this is somewhere in the middle. Like, it's not supposed to be this like massive like blockbuster, but it hits all the notes for the most part. I have a couple of definite criticisms, but overall, this is my initial sort of take on it. I thought this was like a really fun ride.
Totally.
And my criticisms aren't necessarily criticisms, but there's like moments in a film when you're like, oh my God, really? Oh, this is, they're going to do this, really? Yeah. And there's moments when the tropes just like make you just groan out loud a little bit.
Yeah. Like there's the radio broadcast about the illness that she's not paying attention to. That was pretty early on. Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, so that being said, this was to me a delight overall to watch, especially as the cinematography was really great, and I felt like it was amazing, and I felt like the storytelling with the shots that they did and with the set that they had, because it's a pretty, they kept it going, and sometimes it went on a little bit long in terms of some of the and we'll get into this, but overall, I thought the use of space and cinematography was just amazing. So that's my overall take of this thing.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you as usual. We're on the same page. This was a lot of fun to watch. One of the most exciting things about this film to me was like having zero Uruguay exposure in my life.
Yeah,
this was like a sudden dose of something I didn't know that I needed. Yeah, and like being in this kind of crumbling dank, abandoned, not semi-abandoned health club for an hour and a half was a lot of fun. So let's dig into the story a little bit.
Yeah, let's dig into it. And I was looking up what the budget was for this just because I was curious. And I don't know, did you happen to find
I
it?
have no idea. No.
Because I was really wondering about it. But we'll see if we can add that into the show notes later. But like, just really, honestly, like overall, beautifully shot film.
Yeah.
So
So, I mean, let's talk about, I guess, some of that cinematography, because that is kind of what defines, there's some like, establishing stuff about like how messy Iris's family life is at the beginning. But we've also, like, they start with the abuela and that guy, Simon or Simone, and the bird. So that's like right away, something's not good because the dude's like murdered a bird. And then there's some literally messy apartment and messy family life stuff before Iris takes her daughter Tata to work with her.
but
Is
even
Tata
that,
Miriam in the cast?
I think so. But um even the beginning of the film, just the opening shots are really well done.
Well, yeah,
Like
they do
how
kind of like, it's not quite a oneer, but
no,
the
but it's close, but
yeah,
it's
from
the
the guy
same
with the
kind of
bird,
idea.
they slowly pan the camera. It feels like it's just the same shot down into the car with Javi and Tata having like their discussion.
And
But
it
yeah,
goes,
it's
I mean, it goes from like one scene to the other, and you're kind of like listening in on whatever's happening, and you're getting like this sort of like this overlay, an overview of what's happening with these characters. So I thought that was really well done. And then it pulls out to the whole sort of overhead scene when Tata and her mom and Iris go to the health club where Iris is working. And they also set up the premise for all of this pretty well. So, you have Tata, there's been like, and they've set it up like it's done very quickly in the first few. You see that Iris has, there's a photo of her and Tavi and Tata, but also another baby. And like you figure out that there's been a tragedy here. She's very much absented herself from her maternal sort of oversight of Tata. She doesn't want it. She's very irresponsible. And honestly, it was so well done that even in the beginning, it was like, oh my goodness, this is this kid's mother. That was a bit of a reveal, right?
yeah.
Like this, and then you understand totally why Tata doesn't really necessarily want to stay with her, because she's even forgot that she was supposed to watch her, and
Their
she
apartment's
forgot.
disgusting.
It's disgusting, and the kids commenting on it, and so it really sets the table in this incredibly well done way. So what I was meaning about storytelling is that detail and how quick it was
Mhm.
just to set these characters, who they are so quickly. And you're kind of under the impression that Iris is this sort of, I honestly, she's talking to her roommate. They're just kind of hanging out. They've been drinking. They've been partying. The party's just like, I thought she was like this irresponsible sort of like person that just was off doing like fun and fancy free. And then that Tata gets introduced and you're like, whoa. So just truly a well done intro to these characters.
Yeah.
And then the aerial shot with the drone shot is incredible as
Like,
they're just going to
even
work.
from like, yeah, so those shots have all kind of bled into each other. It's kind of hard to
Yeah.
tell if there are edits. But then from inside her apartment with Iris, and then Tata shows up and Javi's there and the roommate, that is all, from my perspective, it was all one shot. And then
Yep.
going down the stairs, and then they kind of seamlessly go up into the drone shot
Yep.
and show like how things are really kind of breaking down. People are getting chased through the streets, even as they're just kind of walking 2 blocks to get to her office or to her job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was to me just like kind of a stop and take a break, take a minute to think about how this was going. I really really enjoyed that, and then you kind of like get down on ground level with Iris as she like gets her kid into her job where she's probably not supposed to be. They check in with David, who's this like street guard or
Mm-hmm.
something.
Well,
And we can,
she even has Tata like hiding behind a car,
yeah,
and I was sort of puzzled by that whole thing for a moment, and then it became clear that she wasn't really supposed to have her there with her.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, so that was all just fantastic, like in terms of how they had that set up.
It took a little while, I think, contextually for me to figure out what the Neptune Club was or even what it was called. Because I think she refers to a club with Javi earlier on. And I thought she was talking about like a nightclub.
Yeah, me too.
Her
I
security guard
honestly,
uniform is like, doesn't look that official.
yeah, I wasn't honestly sure because she talked about the club and I thought it was maybe waitressing or something, but she was wearing the uniform, which didn't jibe. And then, of course, when they show up, I was, oh, okay, that makes sense. That makes so much more sense. So that was a little unclear, but
This first act, well, the tropes that you were talking about, they lay on three pretty fast, pretty heavy, which were the radios. The radio is like talking about an epidemiological blah blah incident and
yep.
patients and proximity and transmission and stuff. And she's just like, I'm not paying attention to it. Whatever. She leaves Tata in the gym and goes and finds a J to smoke pretty early on, which is even like old school horror trope, right?
Yep.
And then the other one
She's
was,
leaving, but also she's leaving her kid in this weird
yeah,
room. Of all the places to leave her in this place, honestly, it seemed a little weird. And why was the floor wet? I don't
everything in this
understand.
place was wet, man. It was just a
Yeah,
wet building. It was really
gross.
gross. I'm trying to think of what the third one was. There was a third
True.
very clear trope.
The cameras, the security cameras, and being able to see all this stuff going on to me was um very tropey. I know they used it a bit in 28 Days Later
Yeah. Oh,
and other films.
it's flown out of my head. I had another one
Oh,
on
sorry.
deck, but it's okay. Yeah, I mean, clearly she leaves her daughter in that gym so she can go sneak in that sneaky joint, right?
Right.
But then she is kind of half-heartedly at least doing her job. She's walking around because she has to check in with those finger scanners.
Yep.
That is a little bit telegraphed, I think,
Yep.
for the end of
Yep.
the film. You're like, oh, these are really important. So are these smoke grenades, apparently, that they find in the gym. There's some stuff that is just like, oh, okay, we're
They're
really laying it on.
broadcasting it. Yeah, they're broadcasting it pretty. It's a little ridiculous because I don't know.
But there's
So
just, I think they really lucked out with this set and the way they have it lit. It's dim and gloomy. It's wet for some unknown reason, and it's kind of scary. And Iris is continuously telling Tata like, "Be brave." Like, I was left in a field with a bunch of snakes once, and this is her story about like bravery. But we can see that things continuously are continuing to go badly, and it escalates pretty quickly, to the point where she's like leans over and she's like, David, there's some people in the street beating each other up. He's like, don't worry about it, they're junkies, I already called the cops, it's going to be fine. And then I feel like 10-15 seconds later, he's
right.
dead, everybody's crazy, it's like a riot, there's like a whole bunch of zombies inside the club.
Right. And they also, I mean, I thought it was a nice, not a nice touch, but a good set, again, setting of this character. Iris cannot be trusted. She's not even trusted by her employers, really. Even the guy she comes in to
Yeah,
take over for Marito has signed in for her because he knows that she's just irresponsible. They won't give her a gun, and she says this to Tata. So we also know that as a security guard, exactly what is she doing other than walking around with a flashlight, right? And ineffectively calling the police about this attack. So they've got that stuff going on, and but they really set up the whole idea that she and Tata, whoever is in this club, and now there's no help because she sees David dead on the sidewalk very quickly, and she even knows she's a little bit powerless other than being able to lock doors or whatever, right? Like it's just an
yeah.
interesting thing.
Well, by the time she's even seen David dead or David, she's also been attacked for the first time by the
Right.
guy who is in the cast known as the executive, who's played by
Right.
this dude Rasjid Cesar, who is he's actually not bad as a
No,
big
he's
bad
very
evil guy.
good.
Iris is played by this woman Paula Silva also, and I think Miriam is like Tata is the nickname for Miriam, and she's played by Sofia Gonzalez, and they're all doing great work. And then Luis shows up later, and he is like really powerful, work from that actor too, played by Daniel Hendler. Um, and so she's already had this interaction where she's clocked him in the head with a skateboard, then ran away and locked some doors. But she's separated now from Tata, and Tata is also missing because she's no longer in the gym when she goes to check on her, and she's now been wandering around looking for her. And I would say it was like 75% of the film she's wandering around looking for Tata, basically, right? Or more than that.
Yeah, but this is this is coming to one of my first critiques of this. And there's, they set up Iris as this irresponsible mom, but even so, she knows something's going on. She knows, wouldn't she be just, I don't know that she'd she'd be running to find her kid. I don't really care what's going on at this point. She's going to be running to find her kid, not just hanging out and crying and doing weird stuff like she's doing. That I did not believe at all. I think the minute something like that happens, you're off and running, and she was not doing that, and I found that to be a little strange. But honestly, a little unbelievable. No matter what's happened, and they talk about how it was Nico's birthday, which is her son who died. I just don't buy that she wouldn't be off and finding her remaining child. I just don't. So that felt weird to me. And then she does eventually, they use the walkie-talkie, and I actually think to pretty much good effect. Usually I'm a very big critic of the walkie-talkie thing,
but it doesn't last long too.
No, she doesn't. Nice. They don't use it as the only tool throughout this to communicate. But yeah, I like how she is able to have Tata go and hide and all of that stuff, and they use that, I think, in a good way.
That was the phone. Even went by the time she'd found her on the cameras and was telling her to go lock the door. It was they'd already moved on from the walkies, which we love that, right? We don't need more walkies in our zombie fare.
Second, the other thing that I felt was a little of a stretch is Iris figuring out the 32-second thing, which is what the name of the film gets the name from. It's called Virus 32. And the premise is that this virus, which is very much like a 28 days later thing, which is like a rage virus, causes all these people who are infected to go into these rages and violence and all sorts of crazy stuff. And unclear exactly what, it feels like they unevenly apply this rule, quite frankly, but after they've gone through some violent moments or whatever it is, an incident, an episode maybe is what you might call it, they have 32 seconds where they just stay still and calm and don't move. They kind of are aware, but they're not able to sort of do any more violence for those 32 seconds. She figures this out so quickly in a way that I didn't really fully buy. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was really like when the guy kills that cat, which is pretty gruesome, and then he looks at her, right? But she's able to just run away, and he doesn't chase her. I think that probably is the first thing that clues her in. And then she watches it again on the camera, and she compares it with stuff on the street. I think there's enough data there for her to come to that conclusion. But yeah, sure, it's a little fast and convenient. It's not as bad as the counting toy in World War Z, counting to 12 or whatever
true.
was, with Brad Pitt staring and listening to the counting wind up toy in the streets of Boston or wherever the hell they were. It was madness. But yeah, it's a little convenient, and it's also just a weird conceit for a zombie. I was convinced this was going to be some kind of transmission thing, but really it's just they hit pause after they do a kill. And the big question I think that you're referring to comes up in the very final scenes of the film, as far as how they are unevenly applying this, and we can get to that. So we've also seen, I was wondering where this bald guy and his little girl were for they showed them in one short scene on the cameras when she's like, oh wow, there's all kinds of people in my office, in my gym now. They show this one quick scene on the cameras, and then we don't see him again until he's actually already dead. And there's it's kind of a little bit of a Deus Ex Machina for how Tata is still alive.
Right, and it's definitely I'll admit that when they came to this thing, and we'll talk about Luis in a moment, but I thought he had actually killed her or something and hadn't told her, and was really like much more evil than we could even have imagined.
Luis is a real
He is
problematic
a
character.
real problem. He is a real problem, but we'll talk about him in a minute. But I was also thinking, when is his dad and daughter going to get involved in this? And they only use it really to set up that whole thing for the
Yeah.
bait and switch for the Tata dead not dead thing. So you know, so there was that piece. I
So
feel like the other.
the
Go
next
ahead.
thing that they go into here is this amazing scene, honestly, in the locker room of the swimming pool.
Yeah, that was great.
Because she starts throwing those balls.
Mm-hmm.
One of them comes back at her later, which I feel like they didn't quite amp up. Like that could have been a real Shining moment, you know, where the
Yep.
balls go rolling down the hallway, but they kind of let that go. But what they're using so well here is that the cinematography that you were talking about before, like because our camera is in a one shot mode following Iris and kind of like looking over her shoulder sometimes. And so we see things that she's not seeing, like zombies
Right.
just walking casually past in the background. I thought this scene was so tense and in a great way.
Yes, yes, and they use that tension, and this isn't the only place they used it, but this is the exactly what we were talking about, utilizing this set to like they use this set to the hilt. They really just did an incredible job at raising that tension. This, I think, was one of the best scenes in the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Just in how they used how she was figuring out how to, you know, hopefully get to safety. And then as she makes the mad dash and ends up in the pool, just the underwater scenes I thought were really well done. And
This
but
is where we meet Luis. Yeah.
but Louise' part was confusing to me because I don't know that she would know. I don't know. It was that, but still, I thought I liked that whole setup, and it sets up the whole idea that they can't necessarily swim. So the zombies. So,
They can't necessarily swim. Yes.
right.
I mean, he's like, that's pretty well done. He's just like, I'm not sure that I could have been as calm as she was, where she's being held underwater by a strange man, and
Exactly.
he's just pointing,
To the
and
thing.
I can't see underwater without
Nope.
goggles, so
Me
I would have
neither.
just been like punching or kicking or freaking out completely while I
Well,
was
and also
unable.
she's been pursued. So how does
Yeah,
she know that he's not one of these crazy people? So
yeah.
that's the thing that I was like, but anyway, it was still a good shot, despite the fact that agree I could not see a damn thing underwater. So
So that's fascinating. Then they come out of the water and like dry off or something, and then he starts telling her quite calmly, quite naturally, like, "Oh yeah, my name's Luis, and I'm here to, I was on my way to the hospital with my wife and daughter, and I'll help you find your daughter if you help me. I just, I'm all ready to deliver a baby. I just need another pair of hands." And then he's like, "Okay, sort of reasonable, sort of reasonable." And then like we rapidly go into less reasonable territory, especially when we meet Mimi, who is, obviously a zombie. And then he reveals that he already knows Tata and he's met her, and starts to hold her hostage, or her location hostage at
yeah, like
least.
he quickly goes from this character where you're like, okay, yeah, guy's just trying to get to the hospital. Oh, okay. He's got a zombie wife and she's pregnant, and that's very much Dawn of the Dead, like absolutely a Dawn of the Dead moment
Yep.
where he's acting as if this is completely reasonable, and even says to her, and this is like the reveal where it's just really, I mean, this was at the point where I was like, oh, he's going to have to die, like you just don't do that. And um he basically admits that he's like hidden Tata somewhere, and understandably Iris is just incredibly um beyond outraged and panicked about it, and just tries to attack him, and it doesn't go well. But I was just, his behavior here is on the border, not even on the border, it's well over the line of oh, you have to just sort of placate this guy because he is not fully in his right mind,
Yeah,
right?
irredeemable. And luckily
Yep.
for Iris, she does start to placate and goes along with his scheme of delivering his baby from his zombie bride. And yeah, he says things like, "If you have threatened my family again, I'll kill everybody. I don't care. I'll kill you. I'll kill your kid." I feel like he even says so. He is completely
Yep.
irredeemable.
Yep.
But like then this is the thing with this movie and his character is they really rubber band you with him. And
Yep.
because he does, he admits he has saved Iris's life twice. He saved her in the shower area, and then he threw her
Yep.
underwater and held her there.
Hmm.
While they killed that, well, killed in question in parentheses, that zombie in the pool. And now they're like hauling the Mimi back upstairs, and he, like, his way of traveling through this building is so nonchalant too to me. Like, he's talking in kind of conversational tones. He's just kind of like keeping up a conversation about, like, I don't know, fatherhood or something. And they go upstairs to yet another swimming pool, which is empty at this time. And
Ooh, and
Javi's,
we should also mention that this is the point where he reveals that there's a boat and that
yeah,
they are welcome to join him.
right.
And by the way, they're still, they're bringing his wife up the stairs, who is totally bananas and fully under the virus influence. And he talks about how she started to show symptoms a few days before, tried to like self harm her own baby. And so you can imagine what kind of a hospital trip that was in the ambulance when all this happened. And so, but he's talking about all this in a reasonable way. And even how he talks to Iris about Tata, and oh well, if somebody you loved was infected, if Tata was infected, would you abandon her? And maybe this thing will pass like a cold, right? And
Yeah.
she had brought up the fact that, oh, maybe the baby's infected, and he just keeps looking at her and says, well, I'll deal with that when we get to it, or something weird like that. Like, he is putting like this very reasonable tone on things that are absolutely unreasonable and outrageous.
But he
Quite
clearly also has a switch inside
yep,
where he becomes unreasonable.
there's definitely a switch. So anyway.
He's also, yeah, the exposition guy, because he knows the rules, because, well,
Mhm.
his wife has been apparently slowly succumbing to this. They
Mhm.
have these like little circles on their palms is one of the symptoms, or like the only symptom before they become
Mhm.
completely crazy. And so he's kind of like, wow, don't you know anything? First of all, they can't swim. Second of all, they give little circles. End of exposition, kind of, but it's enough that suddenly, he's the expert. And so, yeah, they also find Javi. Somehow he's in this building and on the roof in this empty pool, and he is not in great shape. And he and Iris have a fairly definitely too lengthy scene
Yep.
of her and him coming to like the conclusion of their relationship. It was pretty clear, even from the early scenes, that they still had a lot of chemistry. It's just that
Yep.
Iris had gone off the deep end of grief into this coping, whatever she was doing, and he was like just raising Tata basically by himself. And so they have a discussion about who is at fault for Nico, the baby's death. And
Yeah, it seemed a lot to go into when he's bleeding out in a pool.
apparently he thought that was really important for his last words to be like, your mom it up. And then there's this pretty insane scene where a bunch of zombies come into this room all at once, and they have to use the smoke grenades. And this also leads into one of the two for me scenes where I was just like, oh, I don't think I can watch this. Right
Yep.
when when a zombie comes up to bound Mimi, and
That was pretty rough.
they have this like really uncomfortable zombie to zombie understanding moment, and then the machete to the belly
Oh,
scene, and I'm just
yeah.
like, oh, this is gonna happen, and then they don't let it happen, and they do this twice. And I guess I'm grateful for the fact that they take you up to this edge of like, absolutely not, and then they don't do it. And so I am grateful for that, because it definitely could have been worse.
Could have gone very differently. And this was like the moment where it was really well done and I appreciated the filmmaking. Um, but it was a rough thing to watch, and they do push it right up to the last minute, when the other zombie's about to, I think, just cut into her belly, and that gives you some inkling that maybe the kid is normal.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it was really done in a good way, and that is something that this movie does repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
The last moment save,
And this
when
also
something
shows you, sorry, finish your
no, no,
sentence.
no. The last moment save, when it would be something that would be quite, I would have had a hard time keeping watching if
Yeah.
such a thing had happened.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. And this scene also shows you that Iris, she had a chance to leave Mimi and Luis here and just go try to find Tata on her own, even though she doesn't know where she is. She had a chance to leave at this point. She had a chance to stay in hiding, but she calls out to the machete wielding zombie and basically saves the day in time for Luis to come out and finish it off. So this is a big moment for our heroine here, as like this irresponsible person. Now
Mhm.
she's taking responsibility for that infant unborn child in a way, right?
Yep.
So I thought that was pretty important. And this whole scene really just underscores that Luis is somehow a heroic character too, because he's constantly against all odds surviving and bailing her out and saving her life. And after this, then I think we go straight into the labor and delivery scene. The first baby they show is weird and CGI and uncanny valley, and I didn't like it.
Yeah, the baby's super creepy, in a disturbing way. Um, but they do, I mean, if you want to talk about a horror delivering this baby from a zombie mom, that was well done. But this next part was the part where this was the part where I was like, are you serious? Come on. He would never, ever, ever in a million years do this,
He
ever.
insists on skin to skin with
Which is just insane, because also you don't know how this virus is
transmitted.
contracted,
Yeah.
and I just do not buy that he would ever do this given all he has sacrificed. Even if he believes that she might be well at some point, I just don't buy this scene at all. And he gives her a pigeon to placate her for something to then do her 32 seconds of calm. And then in an insane twist, the lights go out and she somehow manages to take the baby and not kill him. And there's this whole tense scene where she's like holding the baby's head and all this weirdness.
That's a real baby. Those were real human adult fingers, like
yep.
aggressively massaging an infant's face. And
yeah, it was not good. That made me feel weird.
Yeah, I'm hoping that was actually that child's mother, and it wasn't as rough as it looked on film.
It did look, to me, it looked pretty rough, and it
looked
was
a little
just
rough.
Yeah. But maybe that it was not as much. Maybe that's the magic of filmmaking.
I hope.
And then this is the second thing that is okay. Do not. I was just like, if they go where I really don't want them to go here, I don't know if I can finish watching this.
Yeah, and these two moments are so close together in the film, you're left a little traumatized, right? But yeah. Luis is really fast on the trigger is the short version. And even though Mimi was about to, we assume, do something to the baby, he shoots her in the head first. Yep. Of course, this also introduces this like horrible element in any horror film of a newborn baby in a horror film.
Right. And like how much is, well, at least they had and while the CGI baby was terrible, I approve of it not being a child not being in that room for that scene because it was so weird. And I don't know how much kids take in, but that just seems like a bad idea. So maybe it was just the scene, and maybe it was just its mom looking at it lovingly, and that this kid didn't really actually go through any trauma, but just really just even the idea of a kid kind of going through this is a little upsetting. But
I'm not sure that they even showed a baby again, other than like a
just
doll and swaddling for the rest of the movie after this. I'm sure even just having like babies on set for just to film those scenes was probably a long time and too much to put a kid through. So the problem here, of course, and I don't mean to get into like baby mechanics, but they need to eat like as soon as they're born. And every 2 hours after that. And I know the rest of the movie, it's a short movie. It's 130 minutes total, right? But like they never show anybody feeding that child.
Nope. I was thinking the same thing. And I was also thinking, well, where on earth are they going to get anything? It seems like this whole city is in flames and they're by the waterfront and there doesn't seem to be a lot around. I don't know how this was going to work or the next step is going to work, but
I think the movie is just like, we're going to ignore the fact that babies eat, need formula or need milk for now. And just accept the fact that this newborn is really quiet and docile a lot of the time.
Yep. Cool.
So as soon as this scene is done, it's like Luis is like, all right, I've got my baby. Tata's in the boiler room, which is like one room away from the workshop where Iris knew she was, because that's kind of exactly like directly she goes there, finds the bald guy that we saw on the camera earlier with his revolver on the floor nearby, finds the cast cut open and Tata's backpack, and then we see the burned body of a, probably a tween or like a kid like Tata's age. And what I don't like what the movie's doing here, because I know that Tata's okay, like just because of how movies work, right, and story. But they have still killed a child in this scene. Like we don't
Yep.
have to watch it.
But yeah, no, agreed. Like a child is gone, and you're in this weird position where when you find out, oh, it was this random dad and his daughter, and that the people threw her into the boiler, and Tata's like, oh, he tried to save me and whatever. But there's this moment, and you're like, oh, I'm glad it wasn't Tata, but this horrible thing where this other kid has died, and this dad and this kid has died. It just is a really, and they just keep kind of going, which I guess they have to, but it's just rough. And
Yeah.
I feel like Tata would be maybe shell shocked having witnessed this, no? And which makes it, oh, there's a lot of scenes later on where Iris is like, Tata, close your eyes. Well, Tata also already watched this kid getting thrown into a boiler and dying.
Yeah.
So maybe this isn't the time to like be shielding her at this point, because the damage is done, and maybe we need her to be more alert and watching out for herself. But you know, anyway.
It's a troubling part of the film. It's not like a deal breaker, but it's I was just like, damn, dude, that's a dead kid. Like you did do it. You did it, film.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they are reunited. Oh no, they're not reunited. First we go through one of those chest mounted shaky cam scenes with Iris reeling from the like thinking that her daughter's dead, grabbing this dude's gun and going to shoot herself with it before she notices the little red finger light, that is our trail of breadcrumbs to find her daughter. And that's fine, right? A little bit obvious.
Also somewhat implausible, but cool.
What, like anytime the wrong finger is put on these sensors, it just glows red forever until it's
I don't
fixed.
know. It just seemed, because anybody could be touching these things. It wouldn't have necessarily been her daughter. You also have these crazy people running through. Who knows what kinds of things they're getting into?
Yeah.
Maybe they see the light and they seem to be like doing like a sound, light, smell. So anyway, but okay, I'll give them this little breadcrumb trail, and they set this up very obviously at the beginning. So I'll give it to them.
Yeah. Once they're reunited, she's referring to herself as mom, and I'm going to promise you that I'm going to get you out of here, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
The room full of rats, I thought was good. Like these are the moments where you finally, or you have a little bit of this like third act hope, or maybe this is the end of the second act. It's kind of blurry here. But you have a little bit of hope. She like finally Iris is like, seems to be firing on all cylinders. She's like, okay, I've got booze in my flask. I'm going to start a fire. I'm going to chase the rats into the hallway, and then I've got a plan. My issue with the scene was she definitely waited like 10 extra seconds before she started her stopwatch, and then they moved way too slowly through that hallway.
Right. And I'm just like, no. And they do this like really, I thought it was hilarious just because they sort of like show you the countdown on her phone, and it's been clearly about 15 seconds, and they show her phone, it says 6 seconds, which I just was like, oh no, it has not been 6 seconds. And so there was that. And also just run. At this point, just run.
Yeah, I don't think that they get shaken out of their stupor by fast movement or being pushed. We haven't seen, but definitely the walking super slowly and pointing your gun at each one as you walk past it.
Yeah, like you need to get out of there, and you only have 32 seconds. This seemed even just, come on, let's get out of here. And that whole scene just drove me absolutely bananas.
Yeah, it was pretty frustrating. It was funny that the gun was empty the whole time too.
Yep.
But then she picks up that like piece of rebar and really does some work. The following scenes are a little weird because like Tata is a little kid, I don't know, 10, 12, and they managed to keep ahead of this gang, this huge crowd eventually of running adult zombies. And these are not like uncoordinated.
Nope, they're very fast. The fast coordinated zombies, they're not slow at all. They're not even like slightly awkward running.
She does use her knowledge of like the layout of the gym to kind of stay ahead of them and use the stairs and stuff. And I thought that was good.
Throws down the lockers. I thought that was good. Well, and also at the beginning, they show her and Tata running to work together. So I felt like they were trying to set up the idea that maybe they were okay doing this, and it was sustainable. So I thought that was probably part of what they did in the beginning for them to run to work, although they don't show them like fully sustained running to work. So it's hard to totally connect that, but I felt like that was the thing. And she's been the security guard here for years, so they eventually end up outside. Here is another to me an excruciating part was the whole ruse with the car and stapling the things and like
Well, they had to introduce that staple gun, that
yeah, I
whatever.
know, but still it was just yeah. Anyway, they have a whole ruse where they're the zombies are locked in an ambulance. Then she and Tata are in the car, but they have fabric up, I guess, so that they can't see that they're not in there or something.
Yeah.
I thought initially it was like so they couldn't get in, and I'm like, that is not going to help you. And also, why are you putting it in front of the windshield?
Yeah.
And so, and then they, of course, there's this whole ruse, and it goes down the street. And then this is the part that I still don't fully get because,
Yep.
and this is the part where they don't apply these rules. These zombies are they're rage zombies. They don't, and this particular guy, this executive zombie guy that they keep showing, they do show him watching the security cameras, but he doesn't have a knowledge of this building that we know of. Maybe he does, I guess. But to get around and to get to where they are so quickly, because they do show very obviously a camera that clearly must have shown Tata and Iris going down into that sinkhole, going back in the underground to get away from the zombie horde. And he ends up down there. But I found that to be a little ridiculous that he could find them that easily.
Yeah, I guess maybe he's a special kind of zombie. That was not as much of a problem for me. I saw them set it up. I was like, this is very expected. The things that I didn't understand about this scene were why he claps with his wrists. That didn't get that bit of context. It was like
me
a
neither.
flamenco thing, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I didn't understand that. That was just something that this guy particularly would do.
And then after,
we never saw anybody else doing that, right?
No, he was the only one doing it. Maybe it's a Uruguay thing. And then after, well, long story short, they find Luis and baby down there. Luis is not long for this world. And then he shows up.
Has to pay for all that all those shifty things he was doing.
Yeah,
right?
Even though he's like this, redeemed whatever. He's a bad guy. Although I think he says at one point in the movie, like, I'm a good person. And I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not.
Nope.
So executives, Iris does this like, noble sacrifice. She's like, Tata, when you hear nothing, you have 32 seconds, then you have to run. And she goes to attack the executive zombie who just beats down on her.
Yeah, this is pretty rough.
And it's not, all you're really looking at is Tata's face. So it's done, tasteful, I guess you can say. Way.
Yeah, but he's like stomping. We saw what he did to the cat. So all you can do. And look, I have to admit that this was a pretty artful way to do it because you saw what he did to the cats. You can only come to the conclusion that he's doing the same to Iris. So the fact that she is in any way conscious after this is pretty incredible. And I don't buy that.
Question. Yeah. So he goes into his stupor and Tata goes to check on mom. Iris is like breathing and talking, eyes open, starts moving her arms even. She's not dead. So why has this guy gone into a stupor? Is it because Luis has died and that like triggered it?
Maybe, I don't know. But
to me, I was like, I thought that was the only explanation, or that they don't actually have to kill to go into the stupor.
Go through these episodes. I don't know, but or maybe he thought she was, so he was already in the stupor. Again, they play with this 32-second time in a way that does not make sense.
Fit in a whole flashback to the beach before they have her shoot him in the forehead with a staple gun that is enough to penetrate his skull. I'm not sure what kind of staple gun this is, but it's like a nail gun meets a staple gun maybe. But yeah, they jack up executive zombie, and then Iris, beyond all probable outcomes, stands up and they bend some metal bars to extract the baby and walk out into the port. And like what? Yeah, and then there's like it's not a post-credit scene, but there's definitely like another scene that happens here, right? With the swimming pool zombie suddenly wakes up. Yep. And like the music gets a lot more sinister, and it's just like, oh yeah, you thought this was going to be like a sort of a happy ending, which clearly it's not. Like the city is destroyed, and
they still don't have food for this kid.
Well,
baby or them.
That's never been a concern.
Yeah, but anyway, but it was I wasn't sure what they were going with for this. I thought maybe this cured the guy, but maybe not, and maybe he's just I don't know. But the music makes you think, oh no, they now can come back after stasis in the water somehow. So the whole drowning thing is not a thing,
It's not a
right?
thing. Yeah. Um. So yeah, like taking this movie apart scene by scene, maybe is not fair to it because it does have so many strong elements in that little tight cast, that tight set, the amazing camera work, good makeup. Um, and this was a lot of fun to watch, even though it was super stressful. And there were a couple of scenes where I was like, no, no, you don't. But then they didn't. It's a
Oh
recommender, I think, though, right?
no, totally, totally. I and even with these like, and again, these are just normal things to talk about and criticisms and things like that. But I think overall, I enjoyed the heck out of this with those moments, even those scenes, and they were really well done. Like where they take it almost too far to the edge and bring it back. I thought that that was really well done. But I would absolutely recommend this.
Yeah.
And again, the use of this set was to me just so incredible, really, truly impressive. Because they the lighting, the color, the everything about this just I thought was impressive to me. And I still have not been able to find out the budget, but I just think that this was just a really good attempt and a good execution. And honestly, I think it's better than a lot of some of the bigger tentpole zombie movies that we have seen, and I enjoyed it a lot more than some of those. So,
Oh, hell yeah.
um, I also wanted to say, I think that the cast is probably weirdly incomplete. So Miriam is actually Mimi, and that this
Oh,
Tata is played by somebody else that is not listed.
she's like a
So
pretty major character.
yeah, her name is, unless this is who they have listed, but like so that's kind of odd that they don't have that
Well, when I was
in
watching the
there.
credits
Her name is
scroll,
Pilar Garcia.
okay, well, great job, Pilar. When I was watching the credits scroll, I didn't even see Iris listed
Yeah.
on the
So I
cast.
don't know. I don't know what they were doing here, but those actors should certainly get credit for what they did.
Yeah.
I also want to say like the whole thing with Tata, she's a they did a good job under like she's definitely and this was another thing that they set up really well at the beginning. She's used to taking care of things. She's used to taking care of her mom, and taking more of an adult role because her mom is so responsible. So I liked that they set that up immediately. So you do believe that she's quite capable of kind of like taking care of herself, and that's exactly what they show at the end is that she does take care of business with exec zombie, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So but I like how they didn't play her in this strange way that they sometimes do with kids. Like I think that their rendition of her was realistic.
She doesn't get a lot of time to like talk about her feelings, I guess. She kind of
No,
recites what happened
right.
in the boiler room, but she doesn't. Yeah, and I guess in the very first scene, she's talking about how she doesn't want to hang out with her mom or go to her mom's place, and we understand why. But they don't try to do too much with her, and I think that's where a lot of child characters can fall apart, is in trying to write that dialogue or make them more multidimensional. She's not super multidimensional in this film, and that's okay. It's really the Iris vehicle. Iris is our main story arc of low to high, and Luis is low to high to medium. I don't know. Luis, I'll never understand you. All right, but yeah, I think that's the movie. Virus 32. It's on Shudder. I think it's definitely go watch it. And I would love to see more stuff from Uruguay.
Yeah, no, and that was actually the other thing I thought was so fantastic. I don't, I have a friend from there, and obviously I've seen the photos that they have put up of the city, but never really seen a film that had been taking place there. And I really enjoyed that because it was just sort of a very different city landscape, and it was kind of cool because you got to see pieces of this, especially in the drone footage at the beginning, and then just seeing the water and everything at the end that I thought was pretty cool. Though I think some of the effects, obviously, on the coastline and whatever were CGI, but that was like kind of a fun thing just to have a new landscape that wasn't Europe, that wasn't the US, right? Like I thought that was a cool
Yeah.
little piece. And I would love to see more from this director. I know that I think some of the criticism that I've seen out there is that they were pulling too heavily from 28 Days Later, but I don't know. I just thought that yeah, sure, it's that premise, but if you're comfortable with that, I feel like that this was really great. And um they don't get too far into the weeds about what exactly is causing this and how it's transmitted, but like I just thought that this overall was a fun ride. And I definitely, if you're into this genre, I think this is well worth watching.
Yeah, for an hour and a half, like they definitely they pack in the stuff you want and not much of the stuff you don't. So that makes it definitely worth the price of admission. So yeah, let us know what you think. If you've seen this, give us a holler. We're on Twitter at Reanimated PCast. We are on the emails at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. And you can find our show notes, such as they will be for this episode, because we didn't have a lot of news, on line at reanimatedpodcast.com. Give us a shout. Let us know what you think. And if you like what we do, it's always nice if you can give us a review on your podcast listening vehicle of your choice, whether that's Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify. We're all over the place. You can find it. And I'm going to say thank you for listening and ta-ta.
Also, thank you for listening and ciao.
Not to be confused with Tata.
Nope, not the other Tata.
Okay.
All right.
Bye for now.
Till next time. Bye.